What I'm working on is the economic history of the North American cement industry. So just as background, cement's the powder that's mixed with sand and aggregate to make concrete. And I'm focusing on the North American cement industry because between about the 1850s and the early 1900s, Portland cement went from being a very expensive niche product to being almost like a commodity it is today. Basically, the modern industry was developed during that time. Its technology, market structure, all these things. I've focused on a number of things. One is first exploring the role of things like institutions, particularly government science, but also the role of energy costs. And they're some of the areas which, and now as I'm working on more the earlier development, in order to understand the timing of all these developments, I'm also looking at things like the role of transport infrastructure, like canals and railroads. That's involved sort of looking at early letters, looking at early industry publications, newspapers, corporate records, that sort of thing. What I hope to, I guess there are two broad sets of outcomes. The first outset is basically there's been a lot of historical research, either doing cross-section across wide ranges of industries or focusing on a small number of specialised industries, like the steel industry, the textiles, the car industry, and more recently computers. This is an industry that hasn't really been studied much by historians or economic historians. So basically first is to get a really good account and fix sort of the rough accounts that people have tended to rely on. But then secondly, to get a better understanding of the role these different factors played in these developments, including how, because they're linked into things like development of industrialisation and urbanisation. Until Portland cement was made using the new technology, it wasn't really feasible to use reinforced concrete. So you imagine a world without reinforced concrete, skyscrapers would be much smaller, that sort of thing. Bridges would be smaller, all these sorts, it'd be completely different to the way things are now. So understanding that is sort of the second thing. Well, I see the two sets of impacts. The first is provide a better resource for future researchers. So basically, at the moment, almost all, anytime there are historical references to the cement industry, they go to one book that was written by an industry participant. And while it's a great resource, there's stuff that's, we understand better now. And so basically future people who are looking at this industry or related issues will have a better base of knowledge to build on. Secondly, these sort of stories about the development of industries are very influential in the way, say, policymakers think about. So, Silicon Valley is an example where that thing's just been used over and over to justify all sorts of policies. By providing a detailed case study of an industry in the construction area and relating to things like choice of construction materials, this will provide another viewpoint and another base of information for people thinking about, say, reactions to things like climate change, which will need different approaches to building, or just more about thinking about how links between government. Because one of the things I found was that while public science, for example, contributed to the rise, it did it in a very specific way. You couldn't find a systematic link. So in some areas it helped, in other areas it seemed to have no impact at all. And so I think it's important for policymakers to know that. So I say that's the second area.